All right, everyone, it is 9 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started promptly. So thanks for joining us on your VIP/work day. I am Kate O'Leary, one of the Innovative Learning Coordinators, and I'm just going to introduce our wonderful presenters that have offered so very nicely to talk about PL in special area and outside the classroom, because we know there's some different challenges that y'all face. But Brittany is joining us, and she is a music teacher. And then we have Chris Matthews, who is a media specialist.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
This is all them. The show is yours, ladies.
All right, go for it, Chris. You can start the ball rolling.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. I'd love to know, especially since we have a small group, what do we all teach? Like, I know Meverden is at my school. She's our curriculum coach, instructional coach. And then Cindy Gaskins is also a librarian or media specialist, but I don't know everyone else. So I'm assuming all special area, but what do we teach?
Well, I'm just a TA for special ed, and she teaches English and social studies.
Okay, great. Orchestra dance.
Ooh.
At College Park Middle.
Man, I was a dancer when I was in middle school. I miss it. I know Jasmine teaches music at Hanahan. Yeah.
There we go.
All
right. I just kind of wanted to get an idea. Yes, they will. Okay.
Oh, that's cool. So, like, are you, like, in the special area schedule then? That's really cool, Erin.
Yeah, I'm considered a special area class for my kids.
That's cool.
Okay.
Something new today. All right. So, we're going to kind of talk about personalized learning in the special area setting, especially since we only see our students, we see our students way less than gen ed teachers do, and just kind of how to adapt that style of learning for our time constraints in the special area classroom. So some of the things we're going to be talking about is what's personalized learning anyways, some of the first steps that you should take, because this is a big cupcake to swallow. And we definitely just want you to lick off the icing. We don't want you to take the whole bite of the cupcake. Gathering information, pathways, progressions, tips and advice, and resources that you can go home with today. The presentation Kate put in the chat, but I will go ahead and hit copy and paste again. And it's definitely interactive, so feel free to just unmute, ask questions, or put your questions in the comments. Or if we tell you to click something, by all means, click and engage with us. We would love your feedback on that. But Chris, do you want to talk about the goals?
Sure.
Kind of what you want to get out of it?
So our goals for the session are just to kind of get you a little more comfortable with trying some things in personalized learning. Like Brittany said, it's a big undertaking. We took a whole class together, a graduate level class, and learned a lot about it. So our goal today is just to give you some information so that you can get started. It's not going to be covering everything you're going to need to know, but just some things that you can try. I know this is going to be a really important thing in our district, and so just so special area kind of can get ahead. We're also going to be giving you some templates and resources that we created / use in our class, and hopefully just hearing our successes and struggles, you can kind of feel a little easier about starting this journey.
All right. So, what is personalized learning anyways? It's a big undertaking. Don't be overwhelmed by it. But basically, personalized learning is a way to support all students as they achieve the knowledge and skills and characteristics of the South Carolina graduate. Like what? It's a tool for us to give our students voice and choice, and allowing them to take some ownership over their learning and kind of individualize learning for each student, as opposed to kind of lumping them all together. Is there anything that you want to add to that?
just that we have a South Carolina framework for personalized learning that has 4 basic pieces: student ownership, learner profiles, learning pathways, and then flexible learning environments. And we'll touch a little bit on each of those today, just so you have some knowledge, a tiny bit about each one.
And no one part is more important than the other. All of these puzzle pieces kind of fit together to make one cohesive picture. Now, you may try one part of it first over the other. It doesn't really matter the order in which you try it, but they all tie together to make one big term of personalized learning. So the 4 parts are after this, but whoops, but the 4 parts are after this. But the main 3 objectives of personalized learning, kind of the process in our students' eyes, are how they get the information or access the information, how they engage with it, how they interact with it and grow in knowing the content and becoming more familiar with the content, and how they can showcase to you what they've learned, what things that they have mastered, what things maybe that they thought they mastered and we can help them work on, or something that they were like, yeah, I got this, and they're a deer in headlights. They may not get it at all. But that express part is important because it allows us to see how students can learn and retain different types of information and how we present it to them, and things that work for them and things that don't work for them.
And I see Kate posted a link to the framework, and definitely you can go ahead and take a look at that. Also, just be aware a lot of the things we're going to talk about throughout this are going to be linked at the end. There's a whole page that has links for all this. So if you, when you get started and you're kind of diving in, you can go back to that. So if you didn't get it from the chat, that's not a big deal.
Yes. I believe the first thing we put on our resource page was the framework, but I would just go ahead and bookmark it. I have it bookmarked at the top of my toolbar because I refer back to it a lot. And there are some examples of accessing information, like how we give it to them, engaging with the information. Those are like the fun game type ways that we can interact with them. And expressing it is like having them do a video presentation or just do a presentation in front of their classmates and things like that. So now we're going to kind of tap into the first steps a little bit. And this is the framework as Chris and I felt the need to break it down. But the first part of it is in that brown box at the top. It's called student ownership. And this is giving the students voice and choice in how they either engage with information, or how it could be the way that they take notes. It could be them setting a goal that I'm going to pay attention in class better, but that's a goal that they set for themselves, and allowing them to be like, okay, this is something that I'm not strong at, but this is my goal by the end of the day or the end of the week, or even if it bleeds into the next week for us, because I only see my students once a week. And I believe Chris is every other week.
Every other week, yeah.
So it could be setting a goal by the end of next class, I will complete my collage project, which Chris will talk about in a little bit, or I may be a better musician because I know what this note means, or those are just examples that relate to our class, but it's students finding the motivation within themselves to want to learn our content, especially since we don't see them as often as all the gen ed teachers do. Excuse me.
And this is a great place to start. In my opinion, with the student ownership, it was one of the easiest things for me to work into my classes. Just, I've been a librarian for 15 years, so I kind of had a lot of my lessons mapped out, and how, I teach about this and then we do this activity. So to kind of let go of some of that and give them some choices was something that I won't say it was easy for me to do, like in my brain, but it was an easy thing to add, just to realize, and we're going to talk about how to gather the information so but just to realize that a lot of my kids actually like to do things hands-on. They like to clip from magazines or use scissors and glue or whatever, even though I'm middle school. So giving them choices instead of just saying, hey, you're going to show me what you learned today by creating a Google Slides presentation, but to give them several choices so they could pick how they wanted to do and give them some voice in how they expressed what they learned. That was something that you can start doing almost immediately, just to give them a little bit more ownership.
Yeah, I know in my class, my class is very competitive. We like to do a bunch of games and a bunch of different projects and things like that. And just incorporating the choice of whether or not they wanted to be on their own team or if they wanted to work with one partner or if they wanted to work as a class to achieve the goal. Like I gave them the ability to vote on that and give them that choice so that the ones who really fly better by themselves, they can, and ones who fly better with another brain, they can. So definitely that's another way you can kind of incorporate it into your classroom. You'll realize with personalized learning, there's no cookie cutter way in doing this. You're not going to be the one stamping the cookie cutter. You're going to be kind of making the recipe together, and that's what personalized learning is all about. The next step, learner profiles. Chris, do you want to talk about learner profiles?
Sure. So learner profiles are basically records, information that you're going to collect from your students about how they learn best and how they access and express, so that you can plan what they're going to do and how they're going to collect to gather that information and then show you that they got it all. We're going to show you the kind of mix of the two that we used. There are lots of different ways that you can collect this information. We both used Google Forms in our class because it's really, again, with the not being able to see them all the time, it was a fast way to collect. And then also Google Forms are so nice because they give you all that information. You can put it in a spreadsheet. So kind of getting an idea about a class that, since you're going to have to plan for them as classes. I think this is one of the most difficult things for me to wrap my head around, is that, a lot of things in personalized learning is based on just this one class of students. And if that's the folks that, if you teach second grade and you're going to see these kids every day, that's a lot easier than us who are only going to see them once a week or once every other week. So being able to kind of say, okay, what does this class like to do? Instead of each individual student, maybe something that would work better for us as special area teachers, to kind of come up with class profiles. So when we're planning lessons for each individual class, we can say, okay, these are the kids who are super competitive and they love to play games. Or, this group of kids, according to my profile, isn't super competitive. And if I make them play a game, no one's going to answer any of the questions because they don't want to talk in front of each other. So it helps you get to know your students, and just kind of know how to plan for them is the best way I can explain it, I think.
Yeah, and the perk of being a special area teacher, and there are a lot of perks of being a special area teacher, but one of the perks as far as learner profiles go is that they're continuing. There's something that you're going to be constantly evolving on top of. And we see them, at least at the elementary level, like I'll see them kindergarten through 5th grade. So I can watch them grow from how they like in kindergarten. They're like, I like to sing and dance. But then they get to 4th grade and they're like, I don't like dancing anymore, but I just want to sing. And just watching that growth from one year to the next, that's something that no other gen ed teacher can get. So that's definitely something that is special as far as our special area content. So I thought learner profiles are really cool. And you're going to be surprised. Your kids are brutally honest. They're going to tell you what they need. And it's really refreshing, actually, because you think you know what they need, but the best person that knows what they need is them. So there's definitely a perk of being a special area teacher and doing those learner profiles. The next part is the learner pathway. And this is the part that can get overwhelming. I'm just going to be honest with you now. This is the part that can get overwhelming, but it's not something that you need to do all in one go and expect to just work. It takes the data from the learner profiles that you do and it creates a pathway for students to achieve their goals. So they may set a goal for themselves, and based on how they pre-test on the knowledge, you might create different lessons or activities for them to complete. Now, for us, pathways are a little bit harder because of how often, or lack thereof often, that we see them. But if you kind of take one pathway and kind of chunk it out, it may take a little bit longer, but you'll realize that the end benefit is much stronger than where you started. But Chris, you want to add to that?
Well, just that you don't have to do a learner pathway for everything that you teach. This is not going to be something that you do every time you're going to see a class. You can pick and choose what standards lend themselves to this. They're not all going to. As Brittany said, this is a big undertaking, and it's a lot of gathering activities they can do and videos they can watch, and you creating, maybe screencastify videos of you teaching, or some remediating for those who aren't ready to move on. And it is a really cool way. I will tell you, my students I tried this with in class really enjoyed it. When we reflected on it, they really liked that I just kind of set them loose. They did their pretest, that told them where to jump in on their pathway, and you'll get to see examples of our pathways that we created. And then they just got to kind of move through on their own with me, just wandering around, answering questions, making sure everybody was, following, doing what they were supposed to be doing. But they appreciated that freedom because it's very different from how I usually run my library days. So they thought it was really cool. But I don't think it's something that as a special area you could plan to do each day. It's too much work that goes into them. And too much time for us to be able to do that each time. But it would be a cool thing, for maybe your favorite standards or the biggest ones, and that you really spend a lot of time on. This would be a neat way to approach them.
Yeah, and I don't know if middle school standards work like this, Chris, but mine, we have like the anchor standard, but then we have like the objective for each grade level. So like it's one big standard and it rolls into each grade level. So even if you take the time to kind of go into like one, like let's say I'm doing a second grade, but like the advanced kids can start to kind of dabble into the third grade without being in third grade. So it just kind of depends on what your students need. But again, that's not something that you're going to be able to do with every single standard every single time. And it's a lot of prep work, but you'll realize at the back end, like Chris was saying, it's definitely something that's worthwhile every once in a while for our content. And the last one, and this one for me personally was the easiest one, like I'm already ready for it, is flexible learning environment. And it's just creating that environment that can just enrich special area education. Like it could be different seating arrangements that you have in your room, but flexible learning environments are not just that. It could be how you can relate to music outside of school, or how you can relate to reading and library outside of school, or wherever you are, and just creating that whole puzzle of what special area education is. And I'm already excited because I know I'm on a cart this year, so my classroom looks like a homeless person lives in it currently. And so I'm excited to bring that environment and that positivity and just the excitement back into my classroom next year, hopefully, fingers crossed. But do you have anything to add, Chris, or can we keep going?
No, I think you did great.
Thanks, you did great too. So why, I guess the big question is your why. A lot of the things behind teaching and just education is the why. Like kids asking you, why are we learning this? Or why are we doing things? Why are you wanting to try this new way of teaching? I know for me, it was definitely to break out of my comfort zone. I definitely, as a younger educator, because it's only my third year of teaching, I'm always trying to find that next step. I'm always trying to look ahead. So the only way I can kind of look ahead is by breaking out of my comfort zone. So I'm always willing to try a bunch of new different ways and styles, and that's what gravitated me to taking this course. I've also saw a bunch of other teachers in my school. I'm at Bowen's Corner in Hanahan. They try it and it works for them, and so it's something that I can cross tie with them. And you're wondering how to personalize your content for every student in your school, because every student is going to be different. That's what makes education what it is. They're unique and special in their own way. And they're not all going to be the cookie cutter same. So just trying to find ways to help diversify your teaching is another reason why you might want to do it. But the bottom ones, Chris?
Yeah, just maybe you're looking for a new challenge, or you're concerned about student engagement. This year has been tough on everybody, and especially the kids who've been at home. I know at my school we've worried a good bit about their engagement and are they getting, what we need them to get. And it's really hard when you're not there with them, to get that engagement. So I think, especially as we look forward to next year and hopefully things being a little more normal, this is a great way to improve that. My kids, like I said, loved it. And then I was really curious about how this would work for me. That was one of the big reasons that I took the class, is just I wanted to be able to support my teachers and understand enough to be able to help them. But also, I just didn't really understand how at all I was going to be able to use this with the frequency that I see my kids. So it was really good to go through and be able to pick out the pieces that are going to be really useful for me.
100%. I remember the first session of the class that we took, I ended up leaving and I was like so distraught. I was like, how's this going to fit? And I remember I emailed our teacher, Priscilla Calca, and she kind of walked me through it. She's like, it's okay. Like, don't worry. Like, it's going to fit for what you want it to fit for. It's not something that you can force to fit. You just kind of got to find what works in your situation. Are y'all good? Do you have any questions, comments, concerns, bits of rage? Y'all good?
I have questions. I understand. Okay, I understand that they have personalized, learning in school also. You mentioned Bowen's Corner, and that's where my grandson goes, to Bowen's Elementary. So I just wonder, when they do these kind of things, is that another way to categorize the students and who learn faster, or when they have their own learning pathway? Is that just something, to help the kids learn and put them on are you trying to put them all on the same track, or what?
No, I think we want them all to end up in the same place. We want them all to get the information that we're giving them. But some of them are, when you create your pathway, some of the students will need to start at the very beginning because they have very little prior knowledge. And so they're going to have to get all that background stuff first. Some of the kids may already have some of that. So they're going to start more toward the middle and just kind of be able to pick up at their place and move on through. And then you may have some kids who are already past this. And so not the end, but the kind of bottom of your pathway will be some enrichment or some extra things that they can do. So we're not necessarily like grouping them, but we're giving them the opportunity to jump in wherever they are and still learn new things and get the standards that we need them to get.
So when you do this and you get all these kids their learning pathway and they're in the classroom environment, so how do you continue to teach? Like, you might have kids and they'll have 3 or 4 different pathways. Do you put them together because they're on the same, they kind of like fix the same pathway? How does that work?
Well, the pathway is kind of like one thing, one document. Okay. So like if I'm teaching a certain standard, then I create a pathway to help all my kids achieve and understand that standard. So you can have pieces of group work in your pathway that would be a part of that, but each kid is going to be moving at their own pace and starting at their own place.
Yeah, I understand that, but I'm saying in the classroom you have 2 or 3 kids who basically on the same, but basically on the same level. I
guess that would be up to you. You could group them, especially if they're struggling with what you're trying to teach them, you could absolutely, which is one of the great things about the students being able to be independent, is if
Right.
you have some kids who could be on their own, you could pull these few together with you and do like another little mini lesson if they're struggling, or something to kind of move them past
Right.
what they're having trouble with.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. And I'm terrible with names. Meverden? Melissa Meverden? Did I say that right?
Everden.
Meverden. There you go. It's okay. My last name's hard too. She said some teachers will use small groups or station rotations so that they can take turns concentrating on individuals or small groups. I've actually tried, not during COVID, but before COVID, I did do centers in the music classroom, and it allowed me to kind of group students. This was before I even knew what personalized learning was. It kind of allowed me to group students and kind of see what things they were strong at versus what they weren't. And so taking that time to kind of put them on that number line and group them based on their ability is a good way to kind of see where your students are at. Taking this on is not an easy thing. It's not something that one night you're going to be like, I need to change the way I teach. I'm going to do personalized learning. And the next day, poof, it's going to happen. That's not what personalized learning is. And there's no right way to do this. You just kind of got to try something. And if it works, keep it. If it doesn't, figure out what didn't work and figure out how to grow from there. We're going to talk about some things that we tried and didn't go so well and how we expanded on it. And we're going to talk about things that we tried and we were like, yes, this went so well. And there's just don't go in with the mindset, because I know I'm a perfectionist and I expect things to be done the right way the first time. And I feel like a lot of educators are like that. This is not what that's going to be. You kind of got to let go of that perfectionism a little bit and be okay with making a mistake and allowing yourself to grow from that mistake. So, we're good, Chris? Do you have anything to
Yeah,
add?
I think we're gonna have to pick up the pace.
Yeah, man. All right.
We've been chatty.
Yes, you've been very chatty. So, the first thing that you're going to want to do in order to get to know your students better is how to gather that information about them. And we did learner profiles, which was on that framework. It's a tool that you can constantly use to get information about your students. And we chose to do a Google form because in the special area setting, our time is precious, and we needed to do something that would not only allow them to answer the information fully to the best of their ability, but for us to get this information quickly and to run with it. And so we chose to do a Google form. And what we did is we took my Google form and Chris's Google form and combined it so that we took like the strong questions from each of them and kind of combine them for you. If you have the presentation open, you can click the Google form icon and it'll take you right to it. But if not, I will put it in the chat. But if you want to take a few minutes and kind of look at those kind of questions, fill it out, definitely. And we'll get some information about you too.
I think I've always been a middle school teacher, and one of the things that was really interesting for me taking classes with people from all different school levels is hearing some of their challenges. We had some kindergarten folks in our class, and so when you have kids who can't read yet, a Google form is probably not going to be your best option. So if we have any of you guys in class who have really little ones, you may do, I know a couple of people made things with like pictures where they circled, do you like to work by yourself? It's like a picture of just you. Do you like to work with groups? It's, a group work. So you may have to, something like a Google form may not work depending on what level you teach.
And I went ahead and put that form in the chat, so if you could fill that out. Awesome. So the kinds of questions that learner profiles ask, just kind of give you an idea of what motivates your students, what makes your students tick. things that they prefer, their preferences, and things like that. And this is where I ran into my first kind of like hiccup when it came to personalized learning. I realized that the learner profile that I created wasn't enough. It was something that like I got information from, but I knew that I needed a little bit more. And how I chose to learn from that little hiccup of mine was as I had my students play Would You Rather, I created a Google Slides and I would put the question at the top and they got to type their name and the color category that they would rather. Would you rather have one partner or would you rather have three? Or like giving them those two explicit choices that still gave them the choice, but it allowed me to more explicitly see what worked best for that class in that moment. For time purposes, we're not going to play it because I want to try and get through all the information. But it'll definitely be in the slides that you can keep saved to your drive that you can refer back to when you have time. But I know Chris's project is more right here, so I'm going to let her talk about that.
I kind of did the same thing. I just after my students did the Google form, I wanted to give them a chance to tell me other things. The form is great to collect easy pieces of evidence and to get all that in a spreadsheet, but just to give them an opportunity to tell me anything that I might have missed. I had them I gave them a choice between creating a Google Slides presentation about themselves as a learner or creating a collage. So I have a couple of examples on the next slide, just a couple that I got. They cut out some pictures of magazines and then they had an opportunity to kind of write some things that just let me know things they thought I needed to know that my profile may not have covered. So the profile doesn't have to stand alone if you want to do something else with them, kind of creative and give them an opportunity to talk more.
Yeah, so if you're looking for a place to start when it comes to personalized learning, I would start with figuring out your students' preferences, figuring out what they or how they like to learn best or what environment they like to be in or things like that. So if you're looking for like that little baby piece of the cupcake to start with, that's honestly where I would start, because then you can kind of grow your content and your lessons and your games and your activities and things like that from what their preferences are, which in turn increases their engagement and makes your classroom a much happier place and you don't seem as frustrated all the time. All right. Whew. This is a big one. So progressions versus pathways. Now, our examples are down there. If you want to look back on those, they will be there for you always. We will be here for you always. You can email us and we can kind of walk you through it individually or whatever works for you. But progressions just basically take the objectives and goals of your standard and tier them by what is the most, and help me out with the wording here, Chris, from what is the most like remedial to the most like what's beyond the realm.
Right. You're going to use like a DOK chart to choose your verbs, and then you're going to kind of break down your standard. So your depth of knowledge is growing as you do your learning progression. It's that, and that's when we talked about how not every standard lends itself to doing a learning progression, which turns into a pathway. This is kind of a way to know that if it's really difficult to manipulate the standard into different depths of knowledge, it may not be something that you can stretch out into something as large as a pathway.
Yeah. And the thing about a progression for you as a teacher that's nice about it is it allows you to kind of dump all of your resources into one convenient place. You're allowed to put, well, I say allowed, but you can put just anything that relates to that standard, depending on the verb that you choose, you can put it there. And whenever you go back and like lesson plan from year to year, that resource hotspot will always be there for you to pull depending on what your students' needs are in that particular year. So that's something that was at least nice for me when I was categorizing mine. I kind of put everything that related to that standard in that one spot so that I didn't have to always search for it. I can just go to that progression and it's there. And I can modify it from class to class or year to year. So I'm excited to use my progressions next year to kind of see how effective I did it this year. So, but progressions do turn into pathways, and pathways are the main thing that your students see. That's where their pretest is. That's where they
want to pull one up and let show them an example.
Progression or pathway. Do you want to start with progression or pathway?
Yeah, you can just show kind of what that we're talking about, but I don't if they don't know what one of those looks like.
Yeah. So here's my progression. I'm thinking about changing it into a Google slide. But I just put the anchor standard at the top and then I put each grade level, but second grade is the one that I worked on the most. And it's set on like what the standard is, and then you change the verbs. So like this one is explaining, this one is reading and writing. This one is just reading, and then it's reading rhythm and melody, and this one's just reading rhythm. So it starts in the red as like the basics, and it develops as you go through the rainbow. And it breaks down by how you can access, engage, and express our learning, like we were talking about at the beginning of our session, how they get the information, how they can build on their knowledge, and how they can show us what they know. So, and I'm planning on making it tie all the way through 5th grade, and this just being my home base so that I can always just look for this anchor standard as opposed to looking through my whole drive to find all of the resources that I use. So, and everything will be linked. Everything will be linked to that. So that is my progression. Is your progression look the same or different?
Yeah, it does.
I know our pathways look different, so I'm just going to give you a glimpse into mine. This is my pathway, and I chose to do a Google Slides. And what I did that a lot of people that I was sharing my pathway with really liked was that I had different signs and signals for my students to understand, like how much time they should be spending on each slide, things that they have to do in order to be successful, places that there's a video, or things that they need to write down for future reference. And if it's underlined like that, there's a link to it. So for example, this is where their pretest is, and they write their score there. And then they figure out, based on how many points they get, where to start, whether it's part 1, 2, 3, or 4, depending on where they fell during the pretest, if that makes sense. So that's just one way to do it. There is no right or wrong way to do this. I know one person in my group made it all one Google Doc and linked everything to one page. I just know I'm in elementary school, so they like things that are pretty to look at. And I like making things that are pretty to look at. So that's why I chose to do mine the way that I did. But how did you do yours?
Mine is all on one sheet.
Yeah, the middle school way. So if you want to explain this.
Sure. So step 1 was just for them to take the pretest and record their score. It was a super quick, it only had 6 questions. And what I used mine for, I had never taught before. So everybody did pretty poorly on the pretest. Which is fine. I mean, that let me know that most of us are going to need to start at the beginning. So then you tell them where to go based on what they scored. So if you got none right, only 1 right, or 2 right, then you're going to start with emerging. There's a video that they watch on their own, and then a quick check to make sure they got the information I wanted from the video. So everything, what they're doing is just step by step, but some people skipped the emerging altogether, and they would have gone down to the yellow, which is developing. And I didn't have anyone pretest out of developing. So we all started fairly lower. One thing I really liked about this, and if you guys, most people have probably already tried it, but as I admitted earlier, I'm kind of old. So I had never used Screencastify before, but I had to find a way to still teach a lesson, but not to everyone at one time. And that was really cool. If you're going to dive into pathways, I think it is such a valuable resource to be able to, it's still you teaching them, telling them what you need them to know, and they're getting to listen to it from you, but they can watch it on their own time when they get to that area of the pathway. So that was a really, and I think that's one of the things I included on my part of the resources is something like that, like a video recorder where you're still getting to teach them, but it's not whole class instruction, was really valuable for me to be able to accomplish the pathway.
And the thing with Screencastify that's really nice, I did it over the summer. If you go to like Screencastify's website, it's completely free to become a Screencastify certified educator, but it's video tutorials of how to use it and all the tools, and they make it really easy for you to understand and learn. I think it took like 2 hours of my time, but I ended up learning so much from it, and I use that knowledge every single day of the school year. So, oh man, we're going. If you're
Brittany and Chris, we do have a couple hand raises, so I don't know if people had questions or if this was a good time to kind of pause and see what needs were.
I had them use the raise hand button when they were finished with the learner profile.
Oh, never mind. That wasn't in my computer.
I knew who it was.
So no worries.
Does anybody actually have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know we are technically out of time.
That just goes to show that personalized learning is a lot to take in, that we even tried to condense it into 45 minutes, but it was really hard to condense it. But if you're just looking for somewhere to start, I would definitely start with just getting to know your students better and how they learn and just going from there. But this presentation is yours to keep. If you have any questions that you think of at 3 o'clock in the morning, because I know I do that, you can always email either Chris or I at the end when we, you can tell that we did not get to that. But at the end, we put our whole journey of our personalized learning, and we put our email addresses underneath it. So if you have anything that you think of at any time, I know my door is always open. I'm more than willing to collaborate with you guys and kind of find things that make it work. I am by no means no expert, but I will definitely share my knowledge with you. And I'm pretty sure Chris will too, because she's amazing. So.
Oh, for sure. I know we didn't get through, if you guys have a few minutes, the personal reflections that are shown right now in the presentation, they're each exactly 5 minutes long. Because they were great presentations. So if you have some free time, we share those with you because this was kind of our culminating activity at the end of the class. So I was very honest about some failures that I had in my culminating activity. And we just really want you guys to take away from this that just kind of jump in and give it a try. Don't worry about things that don't work the first time. It is something, it's a change, and change is hard, but if you just kind of jump in and work with your kids, ask them what they like, what they didn't like, monitor what they're getting. Reflection is not something that I am very good at, but I am working on it, and it has become apparent that is super important when doing personalized learning. So just stick with it and try some things. And for sure, anything that we can help you with, just reach out and we're happy to, except Meverton at 3 a.m. I don't think that will work.
It works for me. Because I know I think it's 3 a.m. So you can email me at any time. But thank you guys for taking time out of your teacher workday / VIP day to come and kind of learn about this new way of teaching. We definitely appreciate your time. So, and if you need anything, you know how to find us.
And Brittany and Chris, again, thank you for sharing your expertise with everybody today. If you guys go through the presentation through the rest of the day and have some questions, we do have an open Q&A starting at 1 with everybody presenting on the topic of personalized learning today. So if you're going to other sessions or checking things out, we welcome you back to come back at 1 if that fits into your schedule. If not, like everyone said, please reach out if you have other questions. And thank you, ladies, for your time.
Have a great rest of your day, guys.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, the master almost does transfer to all your chapters. Yeah, once you set it for one thing, it's separate. Uploading a PDF.